welcome to Learning at Large, Heidi.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, no, that's it's great. And this one's going to be a bit different, right? Because we have our AI overlords are actually, with us on the podcast, and they're going to be asking us some questions.
Yes,
Um,
we're going to be the interviewed, not the
yeah, so they're going to
interviewees
ask
for
us
a
some
change.
questions. Yeah, they're going to ask us some questions about the future of humans in learning design. That small question, it's actually very big, and we're one that we're trying to all get our heads around. It's quite complex. Um, so yeah, we're going to get grilled with some tough questions, I think. But
Let's do it. I'm excited.
If learning design became fully automated tomorrow, which parts of your role would you fight to reclaim, and which parts would you surrender to me?
It's a good question,
yeah.
isn't it?
So, which ones do you think you'd claim for yourself?
For myself, I would want to do the strategy piece. That is the part that I enjoy the most. The needs analysis, the solution design, the convincing people that my solution's the best way, the collaboration piece. And I realize too, though, that this is the part a lot of people don't like. I would
Okay.
hand over the development to AI in a second. If you just want to make everything, like make the finished product. And I think most people would disagree that they would flip that. But I think that that points out a really important thing about AI is that we should be using it in the way that we want to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if development is my least favorite, but it's your most favorite, why shouldn't we each get to use AI in the way that best serves our strengths?
And be skills focused, right? So, what you bring to the table might be different to someone else.
Right.
Yeah,
What about you?
I would put needs analysis on top of my list too. I love the consultancy side of
Me too.
things, being data led, but also empathy led. Actually,
Yes.
talking to people, having interviews, maybe doing some observations of what's going on. And if we look at a skills based organization or in that kind of skills framework, that could also include things like workflow mapping or looking at the tasks people might have to do
Oh,
or
yeah.
that they're struggling with. So I love all that stuff. So I'm actually with you on that. I would also want to keep hold of, and I think that humans should, some of that really rich content. So I know
Oh,
that
sure.
AI can
That's a good
help like
idea.
develop stories and maybe some simulations and case studies, but really, is it in the right context? Is it really realistic? I would much rather base that on, on real life, on real
Yeah.
humans, and then you could work with technology and AI to kind of help you develop that into great content. But I think you've got to
Yeah.
find the riches, you've got to go and find the treasure in the workplaces.
Yeah, I agree with you because I think too part of the solution design is like that what you're talking about is like making sure that you're not offloading too much to AI because as we know, like AI just really likes to make stuff up.
Yeah, so do
And
we. So,
we do too. Yes, yes. It learns from us. I'm going to say that so many times this episode. We're the reason that it does that though. Like we come on.
well, like we talk about, our children, it's our fault.
Right. I mean, think about it too. Like, what is it? The bystander. Like that the bystanders are so bad at accurately portraying what literally just happened in front of them because everybody has like their own perspective, right? But like even just because of how different humans are, like this was bound to happen, right? Because like you and I describing the color blue is going to be completely different,
hmm
right? And now we have a system that's trying to make it one size fits everything. Of course, it's going to be, all over the place. No
so
offense, interviewer.
I think we're okay. At least they're safely in the virtual world or wherever they live. Planet AI. But yeah, I mean, obviously it can make things up. But do you think then that means we shouldn't give it more to do than the development work?
Not necessarily, because there's plenty of other admin tasks that we do where there's no risk of making something up, right? Like launching something or, creating copy for our marketing efforts as L&D people that we can then review if we're not a copywriter or, things where like we have so many different skill sets that we're asked to draw from as learning designers, right? And not everybody has those skill sets fully developed. And so I think there's a lot of areas, basic scheduling, right? Like somebody might use AI to help them schedule all the different trainings that they're responsible for. That's a great use for it, you know?
Yeah, or bring together groups for some social learning, right?
Yeah,
Bring cohorts
exactly.
together. Even you could provide packs from AI, or AI could indeed facilitate it for you. If you wanted to do it maybe in a slightly less professional way, then you might get a human facilitator to do it.
Sure.
But, you know, we know AI coaching's got legs, so you could pull people together into groups and you could have AI kind of coach by asking questions and get some reflection going, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right, should we try another question, see what AI is going
Yeah.
to spit at us yet?
Let's
I'm just
do
calling
it.
it AI as though I'm using the whole of AI. You know?
Yes, all of AI. We're speaking to the mother lode of AI.
Humans claim to design for humans, yet most workplace learning is ignored by humans. How do you justify your continued authority over designing learning?
Ouch.
I'm going to
That's
let you
quite harsh.
answer this one first.
I don't know if I would claim to have authority over designing learning, but I guess that might be a problem, as that we think that we by creating some training somehow we have made learning happen, which might be a bit of a problem. So, is workplace learning ignored by most humans? Unfortunately, a lot probably is. And that might be because it's locked away in a corner, it's locked into an LMS somewhere. Or more likely, it's because unfortunately it might not be relevant, it might not be helpful in that moment of need. It could have just been a bad brief in the first place, something that's completely just doesn't fit. It could also be ignored because it's not a great experience, right? It's not helping someone, or it's not feeling like it's developing them. It's not engaging, it's not kind of taking them somewhere. But if we were focusing on real skills gaps and there'd been the real needs analysis done, right?
Yeah.
And it'd been empathy led, and we're looking at feelings as well as like gaps in performance or, you know, behavior,
Yeah.
then I would still like to think that AI, perhaps with AI, humans with AI, God, I'm mixing up humans and AI already. Humans with AI could achieve
Their
better
plan is
outcomes.
working, Kirstie.
I'm going to come out and just give up on being human at the end of this. But yeah, so I think if we dig into what actually is needed and what could actually work, and test that out, and we can use AI with us to do that, then I think we have a good chance of designing really, really well for humans. I don't think that we often use human-led design or people-led design kind of approaches, but I believe we should do. So
I think when we do people centered or human centered design, it's like leader centered. Like
yeah,
we focus it on like what the stakeholders want, and it's like I don't know if anybody explained to those people that that's not what they meant by human centered design. Is it's supposed to be for the human it's for, not
yeah,
for the one who's in charge of the company, right? But I think something that's really important to point out with this question and its wording is that it says continued authority. I would argue that that authority is slipping. And that we're seeing a big shift in the amount of trust in L&D departments right now. And I've talked a lot about this throughout different spaces in the field, and it sounds like it's really resonating because every time I say something about it, a ton of people DM me and comment. But like, we're losing that authority. The problem is that we haven't been doing the job, right? Because I would argue that if our job is to create meaningful, useful learning in our organizations, and most workplace learning is ignored, then we're not doing our jobs, right? I think that's not, that's not a slippery slope argument. That's just literally we're not doing what we're expected to do. And that's why we're seeing entire teams being laid off, entire teams being replaced with like anybody else, right? If you're the first person who is a learning professional in your organization, this has happened to me like a few times. You come in and you find out that like everybody everywhere is doing some kind of training, because it still has to happen even if you're not there. It's just everybody's kind of cobbled together their own thing. And like, that's what companies are going back to. Even though they still have a learning and development team, they're not using that team anymore. They're cobbling together, and you can tell because when you go into those organizations, you see it everywhere. I've actually been asked to join organizations as a freelancer, as a contractor, that already have an L&D department, but the people who want to hire me don't want to use that department. I tend not to do those types of, arrangements, because it usually ends badly, right? Because the L&D team at some point finds out I exist and gets very upset. But it's indicative of a much bigger problem, right? Is that we've lost a lot of authority and credibility.
I did some research a while back, a slight side point, where different teams in organizations, so not L&D, so product teams, sales teams, marketing teams, when they go to do their own learning, when they go to create their own learning experiences, they automatically measure it. They have data around it. I've also highlighted teams that are really good with data already. But what that means is it's being data-led in the first place. They're seeing a gap and then they're solving it, right?
Yes.
Whereas, we know that unfortunately there's not been a lot of value story created in L&D with measurement, which is a bit of a downfall, right? And so there's suddenly a bit of a panic around, I've got to prove my value. You can't retrofit, loads of stats into the work you've been doing. So I think, the continued authority, is an interesting way for AI to put the question to us, right?
Yeah.
But I think the kind of what we're seeing in terms of that decentralized approach to different people creating their learning or cobbling it together, sometimes they're cobbling it pretty good as well, with AI coaching being used in lots of cases. It's everyone needs to step up, right?
Right.
I guess. But okay, let's go on to another question before we get too depressed.
Yeah. Not that it'll make it any better. Let's see.
No.
You describe learning as inherently social, yet most experiences you produce are solitary. Is this a human limitation or a design choice?
You're laughing already.
I'm laughing because it's so true. This is definitely a human limitation, right? It's almost as if not enough people learned about like constructivist learning theory, I think. And that was something that I had to study doing my PhD in instructional design, is like, how we moved from behaviorism to constructivism. So when I say behaviorism, I'm talking about B.F. Skinner and the learning machines back in the 50s and 60s, I want to say. I'm really bad with specific dates. Please forgive me in my poor history. I'm a great storyteller, but I may have the dates wrong. But B.F. Skinner and, kind of like adopting the Pavlov's dogs methodology for little students, which is actually pretty good if they're young students. I've used that technique coaching soccer.
Not geography, I'm just going to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like simple, basic commands. Just like keep it simple. It's like a team of little puppies running around, coaching soccer. But like, as time went on, people are like, oh, this isn't the best way for people to learn. People actually learn because they bring with them this host of experiences, especially the older they get and the more experiences that they have. And that experience shapes and colors how they interact with whatever it is that they're trying to learn. And so do the other people around them. And I always tell the story, too, of the one time I had a boss who didn't understand instructional design and wanted to run it like a Scrum team and wanted me to get a Scrum Master certification and had me take a Scrum Master certification. And that certification was one of the worst trainings I ever attended. It's in my top horror stories. And it wasn't the facilitator's fault. I am sure that in person, she was the baddest facilitator. Like, she was the most fun. She was like, but virtually it didn't translate. And this was like post-COVID. And she talked about how she preferred doing these trainings in person. And all she did was tell personal anecdotes practically the whole time. I had no idea what I was supposed to learn. And if it wasn't for the fact that she split us up into small groups of 4 on day 1 that we were with the entire week, I would have learned nothing. The only thing I learned that entire time was from my group as we struggled through it together. And as there was one person in our group who'd already done Scrum, and they were like, it'd been a few years and it had expired and they were doing it again. So that was the only way I learned something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, one, you like working with people. Two, you mentioned you were struggling through, right? That's the other another way that we can learn
Right.
effectively that we often forget. But yeah, we got obsessed with being like digital first, or 100% digital, and then course first, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's got worse after COVID. So I mean, I always, we used to call it blended learning. It sounds old school now, but I
Yeah.
think we need a new word for that. Like, ecosystem design is kind of being used, but really, that blended design, which we can do even better now with some of the new tools that we've got actually, then inherently you always wove kind of some kind of social learning in, or peer learning, or pair learning, or reflective activities too, which,
Right.
but I guess, when might we need solitary learning, right? Because you can have a balance. If I had a need where I need to be able to do, I don't know, if I wanted to change my tire on my car, right? I don't. Yeah, I could call a friend. Okay, I could learn from someone,
Sure. Of
but I'm more
course.
than likely just to need a resource to help me, right? A video to follow, a guide or something to kind of have a look at. I don't need to extend that, right? It's a there and then need that's then resolved by a resource. It's not a long term, kind of learning
Yeah.
pathway necessarily. But when there's a deeper skill or an inherently social skill, which a lot of the big skills gaps are, I don't think you should do critical thinking alone if you're doing it on behalf of your organization, for example.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
we're going to need to get people together. I'm really hopeful, though, that humans, in part of the design process, will start to bring some of this stuff back, or
Oh,
perhaps
yeah.
for some, do it for the first time
Oh, yeah.
if they've come in on that kind of digital only, or course based kind of approach. So
Yeah, and I've found that over the last few years, I've had a steady stream of ILT projects come in, so that makes me, you know, feel hopeful. But I think you bring up a good point where, when it's just in time, yeah, that's fine for it to be solitary, or when it's even though like just in time stuff, there I think you could make a case for social learning depending on what it is.
yeah,
If you're talking like a workshop or a factory floor and you've got like older mentors there, that's something that can
yeah.
be used just in time. But I think the other factor that's important is like how rigid is what you're trying to teach too, right? Because if it is something that's a little bit flexible, like leadership, right? Or like the best way to do this process, that's something that can be socialized because it's something that can be discussed. If it's like a safety thing, like what you're talking about, where
Yeah.
it's like we have this specific PPE that we have to have for OSHA, that's where you can kind of do that more solitary. There's only one
Yeah.
right answer. And by letting people discuss that, you almost open up opportunity for more risk too.
Yeah, the grey area. I
Yeah.
got asked by somebody at a conference recently. They said, I need to produce some e-learning. I've not done it before. I'm a workshop designer, and it's on systems thinking. And I was immediately like, "Are you getting people together to look at this?" You know, the answer was no. And I was thinking,
That's big.
right, okay, like, so you're tackling. That's what I mean. Those big skill areas,
Big.
like,
Yeah.
even if you gave really, really good assignments, really good case studies, um, really good feedback from an expert, you're going to struggle without connecting the dots with people, because in the real world, you need to work with people on that. That's what I was saying about critical thinking. Like, yeah, you can do critical thinking on your own, but in lots of work problems where that needs to be applied strategically, I really hope you weren't going to do that
Yes.
on your own, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I actually would throw back to AI if we could ask some questions back, which we maybe can do on another podcast.
Ooh, that would be fun.
That, how are they going to step up to the social learning?
Yeah.
And my worry is with like AI coaching, which I've already mentioned. I think there's lots of good things about that. There's some risks too, but there's lots of benefits. I've seen some good case studies, but the risk is, by being very, very personalized, which is great, something we've always wanted, we then go very personalized individual learning where we're nudging them along with their performance, and we forget to connect them up with other people, and we forget about those long term
Right.
skills and
Right.
emotional needs, right?
Right. And I mean, if you look at this in the real world, right? Like we see the effects of these people who are getting into like personal deep relationships with their AI, and it's not very healthy and it doesn't lead to good things. And if we think about that in the workplace, going unfettered and like going unchecked, that could be a really big risk for companies.
Yeah, we don't know the long-term effects, and humans have a habit of getting into bad habits, right? They don't necessarily help them
Absolutely.
in the long term. Yeah.
We
So I
love to do
think,
what's bad for us.
yeah. So Gallup, I think, are saying employee engagement levels are anemic at the moment. That's the word they've used, and I think that we will not nourish people if yeah, you can provide them with a bot that helps coach them, brilliant. And then what? What else? You know.
If humans are storytellers and machines are pattern seekers, whose version of a learning experience is more accurate to reality?
Do we think that humans are storytellers and machines are pattern seekers? Is there anywhere in between those two?
So I think the problem with our friend AI is that it creates a lot of false dichotomies that don't exist, right? And I've noticed this. I tend to notice AI through how humans use it, right? I tend to like use that as a mirror, just as AI kind of mirrors ourselves back to us. And I see, like, I first notice it when I see it on social media posts and I start getting like a pet peeve around it, right? My current pet peeve is like these fake ultimatums, right? Oh my God, if I see one more fake ultimatum on LinkedIn, I might just have to comment on it and tell the person how I feel, because this whole like, you can either, you know, take Scorm to your coffin with you or make everything AI video avatars. Like, no, no, no. There are about 1.2 billion choices between those two extremes.
Is it bad that I wanted the video avatars one though?
No, because I probably would
Everything
pick
but
that too.
Storm. I
If
mean,
that really was like the ultimate,
yeah,
like, you know, if I'm with an FBI agent and I got the light shining down on me, right? I would pick video avatars. And if you know me, you know how scary that is. What does that say about Scorm? But you know, I think that that's one of the downfalls of using AI, is that it creates a lot of these false dichotomies. And then because we are little pattern seekers ourselves, and that's why I think machines aren't pattern. Oh my God. Machines are like, who trained these, right? Like every time you yell at your chat GPT, I just imagine it saying, but I learned it from you, mom, you know. Because it's like it is reflecting us, like it's our language, our message boards, our behaviors that have shaped this. So
yeah,
if it's saying like it's a pattern seeker, it's because we are too, right? Like how do we think about the least politically correct elderly person that you know and how they identify people in conversations? You hear every demographic descriptor of a person. I don't know, maybe it's different there. But here we have like a joke in the Midwest that like our grandparents will tell you like a person's like height, weight, ethnicity, social class in every story. They'll describe that person by those, like, because that is what we do, right? Like we also make these patterns. We also like, we're little routine people, right? Like we get our routines, we have our brands, we do our things, right? I think maybe in this case, AI just knows that it's pretty bad at storytelling, so it's trying to claim something.
yeah. Or it can do stories, but it might not be based on uh, reality if that's what you're looking for example. Or they can
It's
have
also
flaws
just
in
really,
them, right?
it's really bad at creative writing. It's
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a comedian, and she's like, it cannot write a joke. Like you have to give it so much for it to be able to even like, but it can't write a good joke. Like it
Yeah.
just it's missing that piece.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't really get the humor. I guess like this alludes a little bit to the idea that a lot of people are leaning towards using AI to help them with the data and the measurement side of learning, right? And that hasn't been something that a lot of L&D teams have shown strength in. I'm not going to say they're not strong in it, because I think it's just something that's not been embraced as much as it
Yeah.
could have been or should have been. But I would say like, well, there's risks at the minute in terms of some of that data accuracy, as you've like kind of talked about,
Of course.
but also you still need to apply your own critical thinking and your judgments to what you're seeing. So even if it's helping you pull together, let's say, a dashboard that brings together correlative data from different places that you couldn't do before, don't take it as read. You then need to read between the lines. And there's also
Right.
like, don't forget the qualitative data. Like it's really obvious, but go and speak to people.
Yeah.
Use your empathy. Like hold your heart in your hands and kind of go out and use your human power to kind of do all the other stuff. Right? So
I think it's
like,
important what you said about checking the data too, because I read an article recently where it was a company that was like using AI to like route data from one system to another, pretty simply, but it
yeah,
was fabricating the data.
yeah,
And then they found out that they got in trouble because they got accused um, of fabricating, because it was like one of the big consulting firms. I forget
yeah,
which one, but they
yeah.
got accused of like fabricating when it was an error, right? They didn't intentionally fabricate it. It was just they used AI when they shouldn't have.
Yeah, that over reliance. Yeah.
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 And I think that it will get better, right? But I still think you always need to just have the critical thinking and to own it, right?
If learning design was measured only by behavior change, what percentage of current human-designed learning would survive?
Well, I guess it's looking for a number, right? So we're like 7. I don't know.
You said 7. Aw, I was gonna say 5%. So
Okay.
we're pretty closely aligned. And I always like to bring up at this point Sturgeon's law for people who don't know it. It's one that a friend of mine in L&D pointed out to me, and ever since I've not stopped laughing about it. But Sturgeon's law is actually from a science fiction author, and it posits that it was originally about science fiction writing, where he said 90% of all science fiction writing is crap, and that only 10% is worth focusing on. But it's now been adopted to a ton of other fields. And I think ours is no exception. But I think where we go down to the 5% is the fact that all these reports and all these research tell us that people are not measuring behavior change. We're still stuck on completions. We're still stuck on did they like it? We're looking at the wrong things. And, I think based on everything that we've talked about here, it's, about 5%.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily because that doesn't mean 95% has been ineffective. It just means
Sure.
there's no data trail, right?
Sure. Yeah.
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 Although I'm not gonna say either that it means that all the rest is fine. It's just it's not been tracked.
Right.
For some of the reasons we talked about at the beginning. But
Yeah.
yeah, behavior change is an interesting one. I think for those organizations that are embracing the kind of skills-based approach, where they're mapping tasks and therefore they're looking for the learning that brings about those tasks or improves the metrics. And some of the experiments that are happening in organizations are happening in areas where there are clear metrics, like sales
Yeah.
teams, for example, with AI coaching, helping build skills. Then they're seeing the kind of numbers shift, like the number of calls closed or sales closed,
Yeah.
leads developed, etc. I guess because all eyes are on that kind of skill gap, maybe, or the business's eyes are on it more. Then I think we'll see a need for more metrics to kind of come about.
Yeah.
My worry is still that it's quite short-termist. Like they did
Yeah.
X and then they got Y and they were nudged to that position. Like within 3 days, they kind of, employee number 6 smiled 95% more to customers. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
I just think
Yeah.
long-term behavior change, like will we have patience with AI in the mix to allow long-term learning to develop, and will companies be investing in that in the way that they should be for their own business survival?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if we're in that mode yet.
No, I don't think we're there yet. I think eventually it will be. I think what's going to eventually happen is like once a lot of people are saying the AI bubble is going to burst. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know to what extent. I don't think it'll be, that we won't be using AI after. I think it'll be similar to like the .com burst where like it's still part of every day. It's just different, right? But I think after that happens, I think there's going to be a push for people to correct
Yeah.
all of this kind of slop that they've created with AI, especially in L&D. And I'm already kind of planning ahead and like starting to market myself as somebody who can help create AI mistakes to try and get ahead of that trend, right? So
You're
that
an
I can have
anti-slopist.
gainful employment. Yeah. I'm a slop slop doctor. Oh, that's a great one. Just found it right here. So if you need a slop doctor, I can help you. But like, I think we're going to get to that point where it's so much easier, because one of the things I always get as an argument when I say it's very easy to measure learning, you have to stop thinking about metrics as just numbers, and you have to get qualitative and quantitative data. And if you can answer the purpose, like what is the purpose of what you're doing? What is the goal? That gives you your first data point. And then everything else just kind of like falls in line from there, right? Like, is it to reduce accidents on the floor? That's your data point. Are accidents reduced? Is it to improve leadership? How are you measuring leadership? If you're not, then maybe you need to do that first before you decide it needs improved, right?
Yeah.
And just by answering kind of those very simple questions, it gives us a very clear indicator. But people have always been like, well, but then I have to bring all that data together in a meaningful way for my leadership. You don't anymore. That excuse is no longer valid, which really opens up a lot of runway for a lot of people who weren't doing it before.
So what is the one belief about learning that humans cling to the most, but probably should let go of?
I'm going to say that not all humans believe this, but I think maybe within the learning design or L&D world, that we still cling to the idea that people need to be taught in order to learn, even though we don't say it out loud. We are obviously clinging to that because for that reason, like, we have clung to content and things that we produce, and we have maybe overcrafted some of those in it sometimes when we haven't needed to. A lot of learning happens when, you said it earlier, like people are figuring things out or struggling or making mistakes or working and talking together, and they're getting real feedback. And that's not the only ways people learn, but they are often not the things that we would call out as, we want to kind of have a kind of role in it, so we want to kind of own a part of the process.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Your answer, I was gonna say almost the same thing, right? As a you made this so easy for me. I'm just not gonna answer. No, I'm just kidding. What she said. No. As a writer, one of the things that we learned very early on, right? Like I did a undergrad and a master's in English Lit. So something that we learned very, very early on is that you can write whatever the hell you want, but once it's out in the world, however people interpret it is up to them. It's no longer yours, right? And so I think the one belief that about learning that humans have clung on to for too long is that as learning designers, we are important. We are not important. And in fact, if you do it right, nobody ever knows you were there.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where I think that we get a little bit messed up, is because I meet a lot of incredibly entitled learning designers. And I get it. They want their work to matter. And we're in a field where our work hasn't consistently mattered enough to where we feel good and confident about it. So I understand why people feel that way, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's not about you. Right? And like, I think about the training that I just helped create. I worked on an instructor-led training. It was supposed to be like the game of life, right? But for financial topics. And it was going to teach military members, young people who would rather be doing anything else but learning about financial topics, right? And so all I didn't go, these are the objectives I'm going to force down their throats. And here's the quiz at the end where I'm going to ask them an arbitrary date that has nothing to do with, like that's how typically people design. But I said, I'm going to give them a bunch of opportunities to take something if they want it. And they may not, but I'm going to just create a lot of opportunities for discussion. There was, financial topics are taboo, right? Like, especially here in the US, where we're so littered with capitalism that we need people to not talk about their salaries. So we make it taboo, right? Yeah. That's how we keep people from talking about things like that. So it's already hard to get people to open up and have those conversations. So how do you do that? You create moments. We created all these characters that they played the game as. Now they get to see they get to criticize that person and nobody in the room gets hurt. They get to criticize their financial choices. They get to make good financial choices for them. And it created a safe space where people then felt comfortable opening up about their own experiences.
Yeah.
And then they had group reflection questions at the end of every round. And some people got stuff from it, other people, and it was kind of like you have to just create these moments where people can take what they need or leave it. And you have to be okay if they leave it.
I think like that's why words like, being learning architects or being orchestrators are kind of useful terms. I'm not saying they're going to become our, the new job roles that would kind of be kind of odd, but I think the idea that you're creating an experience, or it might not be a holistic experience, it could be a series of moments in places where people are, or where they'll visit, or where they'll find it. Either because they've engaged with something kind of, because they need to develop, or it's kind of formal, or because it's where they hang out, it's where they live and work, right? Yeah, so I think, we it's moving away from that obsession with, it would help when we move away from completions and scores, right? Because it's the completion of what? It just won't make sense in the future when someone's learning much more in the flow, in much more of a kind of personalized way, when they're finding what's useful, or they're being fed it in a moment that's useful for them. Like, completion means nothing. Like, it doesn't mean much now, but it doesn't make sense at all going forward. So I think that might help us shake off our kind of over clinging hands to this idea, like, well, I made that. So.
You encourage learners to adapt, but many learning designers resist adapting their own practices. What stops humans from redesigning themselves?
Ouch, again.
This is one of my favorite questions. Because we just talked about taking Scorm to your coffin.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Many learning designers resist adapting their own practices. Yes, we know this. We know this, right? It's because, from what I have observed, not only are humans just in general resistant to change, but I think specifically in learning design, you've got a lot of people who know better but aren't doing better. And let me explain. Whenever I talk about, like, if you're an order taker, if you're reactive, you're part of the problem, not the solution. I get people who defend their decision to order take so vehemently. It's either, well, I have to work to support my family, and okay, I didn't tell you to quit your job. I told you to stop taking orders. There's a difference. But I've found that most people have not learned the fundamental skills about learning design in order to be able to articulate it clearly to leadership in a convincing way, because it doesn't take very much. Like, after my first semester of foundational instructional design knowledge, I was able to go and turn that into a job at NASA, like just that little bit. And we're really lacking some of the fundamentals. And when we lack those, we're not able to say, this is why this is a better solution than a 30-minute e-learning. This is why this is going to be more profitable than taking everyone off the floor for 45 minutes. We were missing that piece. So I don't think it's like we don't want to change. We want to do things the old way. I think for a lot of people, they just want, not the people who are going to listen to this podcast, but I think for a lot of people, they just want the easiest path forward. They're never going to listen to this podcast because they're not the type of person who would do anything extra or extracurricular in their field. They just want to heads down, do the work, collect the paycheck, log off, go be with their family. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then it's up to the people like us who do care, who are trying to make strides. We have to find a way to move them forward with us. We have to. Otherwise, like, we're just going to keep getting more and more fragmented.
I guess like L&D as a department or function is never traditionally been great at eating its own dog food, right?
No.
Of applying like learning and development to itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
We should be great at doing that. So I ran a session last week at a conference in Poland where I was talking to people about like the future skills of designers, and I was trying to hold up a mirror to say you actually have the skills to help yourself move forward and up your performance and meet the new business goals or the changing business goals kind of better than a lot of other people, because you do this for other people all the time. You know, you have it in you, but you need to do it really well and you need to kind of apply it to yourself. So I was like, you know, like set yourself some goals, understand your own skills gaps, understand where your business is going, right? What your business goals are, and then think about how you can help yourself move forward. And
Yeah.
probably it doesn't mean you're going to design a 1 hour e-learning course for yourself, right? Like nobody's going to put their hand up to like that being the solution.
Right.
Like what nudges, like what resources are going to help you? Could you build yourself something in AI to help you stay on track with where you need to go, with what effective future learning is, or what effective learning is, and how that might work in the future? Like, you know, like I was trying to get them to think about how they need to be for the business is how they need to be, you know, for themselves.
Yes.
Like you have it in you. Like if you,
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
so I think it's like unpicking those skills, and actually when people think about their own development path, what's going to help you develop skills in the short term, what's going to help you run better experiments to either prove to yourself it's the right way or prove to your business there's a new way, like, and what's going to help you develop long-term skills, you're unlikely to write down the things that are going to help you with that learning journey as being the kind of things you're designing today. And therefore, like light bulb moment, like you need to shift what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think
Yeah.
we have it in us. Like it's just that at the minute there's a lot of fear mongering and a bit of scaring about, you
There
know.
is. There is. I want to put a lot of heat back on the L&D leaders too. I love to put heat on L&D leaders because, I mean, Sturgeon's law. Let me just say that. And L&D leaders have really been disappointing me this year across the board. It is on the L&D leaders to make sure that their teams aren't the ones not eating their own dog food, are not the cobbler's kids without shoes. Whatever cliche that we always say about L&D and how poorly their own professional development is, like that is on the L&D leader. That is on you. If your team is not getting what they need, you are failing. You as the L&D leader. Even if, because I see so many L&D leaders who are like posturing themselves, right? Look at me. Look at what I'm doing in the organization. Look at what I'm doing on LinkedIn. If your team is struggling, you're a bad leader, period. End of sentence. Because you are only as strong as your weakest team member. Every good leader knows that. And I own that very personally. So I take it very personally when I see people acting like that's not the case.
Yeah.
I had my team's performance goals aligned with what they wanted to upskill in that year. So one of my team members wanted to be on an ERG and help be one of the leaders on an ERG. I worked that into her professional plan, performance plan for that year as part of it, and said, all right, then you're going to work and you're really going to find out what it's like. You're really going to be embedded in part of it. And it's going to help you in these XYZ ways as an L&D professional, because I could see the value in doing that.
I think like if you're in a situation where you need to shake up the status quo, either because you can see that your business is moving on without you, you know, and learning's happening without you, or because you're a proactive leader and you recognize you need to change things, you need to, every individual in your team needs to be, I would say, you know, 10%, 20% of their time needs to now be invested in new experiments, like doing something different and creating data stories to kind of show the way forward. And I think without that, you can't prove to anybody that things need to change, or you know, unless you have really bold leadership that kind of gets it, right? You know, so
Right.
yeah. Okay, cool. So we've made a call to action there for some leaders out there.
Yep.
Let's see what else our friend AI's got up there. I was going to say up their sleeve. They haven't got sleeves.
In a future where skills shift every 18 months, are humans too slow to be the primary architects of learning? And should humans remain in charge?
Are we too slow, Heidi? Do you want me to ask you the question slower?
Oh my! I don't think we're too slow. I mean, we can only move at the pace that we can move at, right? I think when it comes to learning, I just haven't seen a compelling argument to replace us. I don't think we're too slow. I think the good people, right? The people who I know are doing good work, like the people that we've been talking about this whole time, the ones that are doing tiny experiments, the ones who are, trying to move the needle forward, the 10%, right? If we're going by Sturgeon's law again, the 10% of like really good people are absolutely necessary to be the primary architects of learning and should remain in charge because, I mean, you've seen what AI has been doing to places like YouTube and music and art. As much as I use ChatGPT, I never let it do anything remotely related to copying other artists or, it's like, do you want me to give you a Studio Ghibli version? Absolutely not, because I respect Studio Ghibli.
Yeah.
But I think to our AI friend's point, that things do change every 18 months. We have no choice but to integrate this tool to help us with our efficiency, right? Otherwise, we will not be able to keep up. We're too slow to be the only architects of learning. We're not too slow to be the primary architects.
Yeah. I mean, speed is not a measure of value, right? It's not,
Or
it's not connected
competency.
to outcome in itself.
Yeah.
And obviously the danger, which we haven't touched on, but hopefully is obvious, is that with AI, you can scale up and you can speed up anything you want. But, it doesn't mean it's good practice, right? And a lot of the uses at the moment are
Right.
scaling up the stuff that doesn't really have impact. So speed is not, we're addicted to this idea of speed, I think.
Yeah.
At the same time, we know skills gaps are real. They are going to shift. There's stats that a third of people's skills will have changed or need to be replaced or redirected
Yeah.
within 3 years. I think some people are saying even less than that. Less time. Yeah, but by your next performance review, a third of your skills could be redundant or need to be kind of redirected as employee skills. So
Yeah.
the idea that L&D needs to keep up with that, but I think comes back to that architecture, right? If you're creating the environment for learning, if you're creating the ability for people to learn more easily, if you're not locking learning away in a LMS cupboard, or if you're pretending that learning only happens there and doesn't happen elsewhere, then you're in kind of trouble keeping up with that. But you can create the environment, you can create the ecosystem for learning to happen better.
Yeah.
I think humans
Yeah.
will be good at doing that with AI, and we can do that more proactively if we can put AI to work doing some of the stuff like we talked about at the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
So, I've got hope that we can be smarter, so faster and better, if we
Yeah.
have the right mindset, right?
Yeah, and I think like you're describing more efficiency than speed, right? Like I think there's a difference
Yeah,
between efficient, which is like as fast as you can but still maintaining some semblance of quality, right?
yeah,
Where and we have people doing important research right now too. Like my friend Mike Stein just did that little research with his company where he found that creating something in the more antiquated authoring tools takes a lot longer than some of the cloud-based ones. And, we have some serious metrics that AI is giving us about efficiency that we can now take and learn from and say, okay, instead of just making like a Barbie doll that looks like me to post on my social media, how can I actually leverage this tool to help me stay relevant in my career,
yeah, yeah. And Dr. Philippa Harmon's doing a lot of experiments as well around, like comparing AI outputs with human-based
Yeah.
outputs, for example, with digital learning. And it does, AI is kind of seen to be performing well or sometimes better when the content is quite generic, when the content is
Yeah.
easy for it to understand, right? But if you want to focus on internal skills, on specialist skills, on social skills, then that's where the humans have the power to kind of go better at owning that. But that doesn't mean you go and create content. It means you look at the environment, the experiences, those
Yes.
moments. You use the word moments that help develop that learning. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'm going to close off the podcast because I think if we keep getting AI to ask us questions, then we might get into a philosophical dark hole. And I think we've
Oh,
just
yeah.
ended on a slightly positive note, perhaps, about what
Yes,
humans
I
can
think
bring.
so too. That's good.
So I'm going to say a massive thank you for joining me on this special show, a bit different to usual.
Yes, thank
And
you for having me. It was fun.